Today's guest is Andy Wang, and we are going to talk about inspired money. Welcome to Richer Soul, your journey to a more purposeful, intentional, amazing life. Where are you going to go and how are you going to get there? Let's figure that out together. At the core is the financial well-being to be able to do what you want, when you want, how you want. It's about personal freedom and abundance. Please check out my Facebook page, facebook.com/Richer Soul. That's where I share interesting articles that I've read during the week. Also, if you get a chance, stop by the website, richersoul.com. And if you can, sign up for the email list. I don't send out many emails, but if there's something important or bonus material, that's the best way to find out. So, are you creating the life you deserve? That's the question you need to answer. It happens one step at a time, and it's a journey. That's where the fun happens. My goal is to help you figure out your puzzle pieces and how they come together to design a great life. That means we have to understand where we're going. In other words, what's our purpose? We also need to be healthy enough to be able to do what we want, have the time to be able to do so. We need the financial resources to fund the life we choose. Living life alone gets kind of lonely, so creating strong relationships and being part of something bigger spiritually. While we all know this, and yet we are stuck listening to those voices in our head that create fears and hold us back from the life we deserve. If you haven't listened through episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back, listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create balance in your life. Too often we have so many competing priorities, we need to find a way to keep them in harmony. Many times work takes over or our family pulls us another direction. The surprise sends our finances into the negative. Having someone to help you look over all those pieces and find balance is the job of a conductor. If you want to climb Mount Everest, you'll need a few Sherpas, guides who know the way and can help you get to the top. In both of those roles, it's you that has to do the work. I'm just here to guide, teach, and show a path. Today's guest is Andy Wang, a managing partner at Runnymede Capital Management. He's been named one of the top 100 most social financial advisors. He also contributes to the Huffington Post and has been quoted in major investment publications, including Barron's and Forbes. Welcome to Richer Soul, Andy. It's great to have you join us today.
Thank you, Rocky. It's so good to be on.
Pleasure to have you. So let's start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
That's a great question. I have to say that I have not learned that much from school. I think that I had an economics class in, I'm trying to think back now, maybe 10th grade, sophomore year of high school. But other than that, really limited. I mean, you come out of school and you don't know how to balance a checkbook. You don't know how to read a company balance sheet. So for me, it came down to family. When I think about like my first memory of money, it was receiving birthday money or Chinese New Year money, going down to the bank with my mom, opening up a savings account. And I remember depositing $100 and immediately getting my little passbook. And I could see that I made 2 cents in interest. And I really liked that idea. I guess over the years, my experience is a little bit different than a lot of people because I grew up in a household that my dad was the director of research at the Bank of New York, one of the oldest banks in the world, having been established in, I think, 1784 by founding fathers Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton. So my dad, like our family, we would grow up having dinner conversations about a company's return on equity and is it trending upward or downward, and and how valuation can be applied. So I guess I had all my training was definitely at home, and I work in a family business. I work with my father, and he's trained me. So family over school for me, certainly.
And it sounds like he started training you very young.
Yeah, I guess so. I was going to say that I don't know if it was intentional. Sometimes it was just that's the way the conversation went. And my dad, for him, equity research, visiting companies, understanding what's driving a company's growth, who the management is, that is really his passion. That's what he enjoys doing. He's visited hundreds of companies in his career. And now that we're working together for almost 20 years and he's getting older, but he's still very much involved in the business. So these days, he prioritizes, he's doing things that he enjoys doing and leaving a lot of the other things like operations and things that he doesn't enjoy doing as much to me and my brother. So I think he's so passionate about research that, yeah, maybe some of it's by design, trying to pass it on to his two boys, but otherwise, that's just part of him too. He just loves talking about stocks and companies and what he sees going on in the economy.
That's very cool where your work and your passion come together, because that's where you kind of hit that sweet spot and really enjoy life.
That is a real gift. And yeah, not something that everybody experiences in their lifetime.
No, not at all. So what are you doing to teach your kids about money?
Oh, gosh. It is a process for sure. And when I get asked that question, I don't know that I have like the answer, because it's like, it doesn't matter if you're an apprentice, a student, or a master. My philosophy is that you're always learning no matter where you are in that curve. But for my kids, my wife found this piggy bank called the Money Savvy Pig. And I really like that as a starting point because it's a piggy bank that has 4 compartments. Each compartment is different. So there's savings, there's college. I'm going to get this messed up now. There's donate. Oh gosh. And there's a fourth item.
Is the fourth one just spending?
Yes. Thank you, Rocky.
You're welcome.
Correct. Yes. Spending. So I think it's really cool because it introduces some kind of complex concepts for a really young child, but it's been a really useful tool for us to, when they get some spare change and they're selecting which area to put it into. I think it's really cool for a 5-year-old to be thinking about, this is money that I want to donate. This is money that I'm going to spend. That was I think, interesting starting point for us.
It's interesting that piggy bank has college. We did much the same. When my kids were small, even now, it's the same principles. A section gets donated, and then what's remaining is half to savings and half to spending.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't put in the college saving one, which I guess we should have, because then that just starts off the conversation from a young age that A, you're going to college, and B, you're paying for it. I think it changes the kid's mindset dramatically of, now you're working towards something and you've got financial skin in the game. And I think if you continue those conversations, I think that can become very interesting.
It's very interesting. And there's so many aspects to money. So I guess a lot of it comes down to what's age appropriate as the children get older. But I find it fascinating that even from a very young age, just that concept, they start realizing that, spending money on something today may come at the expense of something else tomorrow. And that there's this concept of saving and donating, which, in my mind are pretty advanced concepts for a really young kid.
We did a whole episode. I did it with Doug Nordman, and we talked about, his daughter is older than mine, but we literally went from like 2 to 25 for her. Mm-hmm. My kids are teenagers still, but just that whole journey of how you teach kids, and when you're intentional about it, starting at a very young age, they actually do pick up, they understand, and you end up with adults who are very financially savvy and go out into the world and have a massive head start on everyone else.
That's great. I mean, me personally, I'm still looking for different concepts, topics, even a curriculum. I mean, I think my wife and I, it's like anything else with parent to child. You're kind of making it up as you go along, and you're trying to see what works and what doesn't work. And maybe some of that you have to do because not every child is the same. But I am looking for ideas all the time. With my 9-year-old, I've talked about the idea of owning a company stock. I don't think that she understands the concept, but we just tried talking about a lot of different concepts, and some stick and some don't.
And you know what? The fact that you're having those conversations is the most important thing. And I think
exactly
just doing that, and then, let them pick a company and buy a share or two. That's easy to do.
Yeah, I think my approach right now is communication super important. So you just bring up as many different topics as you can, and you make sure that there's a comfort level in having those conversations. And you hope that you can get your children to ask a lot of questions and be curious, because ultimately that's how they're going to learn.
So, suggestion to you, and I've recommended this book many times, Mindset by Carol Dweck. And the thing with mindset is it talks about how you talk to your children to give them growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And it sounds like you're trying to give them a growth mindset. And she actually shows phrasings in the books. If you say it this way, you're, in a sense, getting a result that is counterintuitive to what you want. And if you say it this way, then they're going to get into a growth mindset. So
I am open to tips and ideas. So I've written that down. I will definitely look that up. And I think that I'd love to, I want the kids to have a growth mindset. I want to have a growth mindset myself. So maybe I can learn a thing or two.
Absolutely. So why did you choose to get into the investment business?
Well, as I said, for me, it's a family business. And one that, of course, when I was younger, I didn't know that I would go down that path. I think after graduating college, I moved up to Boston. My wife and I lived up there for a couple of years. And so I didn't join the family business right away. I worked at Thomson Financial for First Call. They aggregate all the earnings estimates from sell-side research. And then I was actually working at a semiconductor trading company for another couple of years that was interesting. I was working a graveyard shift, Monday to Thursday, 8 p.m. to 6 a.m., calling on semiconductor distributors and manufacturers all in the Far East and trading semiconductor and computer parts, which is a pretty inefficient market. So these independent brokers spring up, and if someone is looking for an Intel chip, there's a manufacturer somewhere in the world that has a shortage and someone else that has overage. And you're trying to figure out who has what parts and put those deals together. So I had a lack of sleep in those days. And then eventually, that was back in 1998. So there was the Asian crisis. All my customers were in Asia. My father, who is in the investment business, was going to Wall Street meetings put on by these so-called experts, and they were forecasting that Asia could take a decade to come back. And so he and I had a chat, and he said, well, if it really takes that long for Asia to recover, it's not going to be a great environment for one to be trading semiconductors. So maybe I should consider doing something else. And after several conversations, I decided to join his firm, join forces and work together.
Well, that's cool. It's always nice to work with family and to have that kind of mentoring relationship from generation to generation.
It has been really great. I think that my brother also works here too. Both of us had time and experience away from the family business. So today we really appreciate the returning, working with the family, not having the politics of working at a large corporation. And it's definitely a gift to be working with family members closely. we get along more often than we don't. So we're very blessed in that way.
That's very cool. So your family has issued financial hurricane alerts in the past. I think it was probably right before 2000 and right before 2008 crashes.
Mm-hmm.
And we're sitting here today at stock market all-time highs, bond markets all-time highs, and people keep asking the question, when is it going to crash?
Yeah, and the news headlines on a daily basis are pretty scary, whether it's financial or not. The financial hurricane alerts, really that has been one of the lifelong interests and pursuits of my father's research. I already mentioned that he came out of the Bank of New York. He was director of research there for 10 years, roughly 1973 to 1983. And then he ran their money management subsidiary. So he was managing the bank's pension fund and outside clients, including the Dow Jones Profit Sharing Plan. That was another 10 years. So from 1983 to 1993. And back in the 70s, so when he was leading the research department, in that time, you had many bear markets. The financial markets were extremely cyclical. You were having bear markets every 2 to 4 years. Because of that, a lot of research analysts, every time a bear market came around, they would get laid off. They would lose their jobs. It could be described as like a revolving door. The bear market would come, you'd get laid off, you'd have to find a job at another company. And because of that environment that my father started his career in, he did a lot of work on market cycles and very proudly really had the 2 jobs, both at the Bank of New York. And he attributes that to doing research on market cycles and trying to identify where we are in that process. Because if you can identify market cycles, then in turn, you're trying to identify when is it a low risk environment to invest and when is it high risk and you should be protecting your money. So going back to your question, where are we today? It's a really good question. Our feeling, based on our analysis, is that you have to ignore a lot of the noise, which are the news headlines that I'm talking about, and really rely on looking at the data. And when we look at the numbers, we feel pretty good because the economy is growing. We have GDP growth at about 2.2%. One of the key factors that we look at are corporate earnings. Back in 2015, 2016, there was an earnings recession whereby you had like S&P 500 had the earnings were down double digits year over year for about 5 or 6 quarters, really because oil prices had gone down significantly and oil companies were reporting losses. You go back about a year, actually more than a year from today, the summer of 2016, we saw a turn in the earnings. Oil prices had stabilized and S&P 500 earnings, instead of being double-digit losses, were double-digit gains year-over-year comparison. So earnings are strong and we feel pretty good. I think that some pundits are warning that valuation is the biggest problem today. And to that, I have 2 answers. One is that interest rates are so low that one can argue that the stock prices, while they are not cheap, they are not grossly overvalued yet. And then number 2 is that overvaluation usually does not trigger a bear market. Usually it's going to be triggered by a recession or interest rates going up very quickly, which we don't see the prospects of that happening yet. So we think things are okay for now.
Well, that's good news. I'm still fully invested only because I don't know what else to do as far as my stuff, and I've kind of learned what I always think may happen doesn't necessarily happen. And so it's better to stop trying to guess. And I have a portion in the market and that's just going to stay in the market, because even if valuations are high, it doesn't mean that they can't go higher.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, until we see that recession or something happen, you just got to run the course. Otherwise, you're not going to get that compounding effect.
Exactly. And not until we see possibility of a recession happening would we become concerned. Until then, we feel very good about the stock market. And as you said, where else can you put your money? I think that with interest rates creeping up in the United States, a lot of people are not excited about bonds. So stocks remain attractive and interest rates are still low, even though they have been going up a little bit. People are getting more returns out of equities than bonds. And yeah, we don't see any, high risk there, barring geopolitical problems, which are very difficult to incorporate in one's risk model. So yeah, just based on looking at the numbers of the economy on corporate profits, things look fine for now. And, when we see the possibility of recession being high, then we would change the portfolio mix for our clients to be from more aggressive to more defensive. But we do not see any signs right now. We feel very good.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. I took advantage of the cheap interest rates and used it to buy real estate, and that's worked out well.
That served you well.
So we talked about this a little bit before, and you kind of mentioned it in your email to me, and that is that most basic personal finance concepts like budgeting, savings, credit investing are not taught in school. And so the result is even highly educated people aren't saving enough for retirement. What is it that you are seeing?
What is it that I'm seeing?
Yes, with your clients. Do you see, are they saving enough? Are they not saving enough? What's kind of that?
I think it really runs the gamut. But I think that, it goes back to your question, where did I learn about money? And it was not school. And because of that, I think that there's a tremendous opportunity to educate people, and people do need help. When you look at the statistics for are Americans retirement ready, I think that there is a very high percentage that are still behind where they need to be. It's quite typical to hear stories of people either not taking advantage of their company 401k plan. When they do, they often start late. So for many American employees, it's about trying to play catch up. I think that's part of why your podcast exists. That's part of why me as an investment advisor, and I started a podcast too, really trying to inspire people to talk more positively about money and to inspire people to take action when it comes to their finances. I think that there are opportunities there because I think you and I agree that because there's not enough practical training in school, that people do need help. They may be highly educated, but when it comes to their finances, they are admittedly not. So we're trying to help them. I think that there's a void there that can be filled.
Absolutely. And I think even some of the numbers that are out there for savings rates are kind of low. And people talk about a 10% savings rate. And a 10% savings rate is nice, but you have to start at 21 and you're not going to get done till 65 with a 10% savings rate.
Right.
And even then, it's still not perfect. People need to double that, if not even greater rates of savings than that. And I don't think people are talking about the real high numbers that should be saved versus what's kind of out there.
Well, it's kind of funny, right? Because in the United States, we've had very low interest rates. That is not rewarding the savers. I mean, I think that our nation is, we have been a debtor nation, and we're almost encouraged to take on more debt. You can borrow money cheaply if it's available to you and invest it in real estate or the stock market. And this is I think in contrast to some Asian countries that have very high savings rates. Yeah, I think it's a different way of approaching one's finances. But certainly when you have money in the bank and you have that rainy day fund, you can sleep much better at night. And there are benefits that go beyond low interest rates and trying to put your money to work.
Absolutely. And so shifting gears slightly, you talk about the pillars of health, not just about that. To you is a much larger topic. Could you explain that to us?
Sure. We've talked about pillars of health for a long time because in my view, there's a lot more to health if you sort of look under the hood. There is physical health, which everyone's familiar with. There's mental health. There's spiritual health. And we think financial health is right in there. So if you have 4 pillars of health, it's important to really take care of each one, because if one is, in really poor shape, it drags the others down, and it's hard to be healthy. Seen that in my role as a financial advisor. After 2008, we had some new clients come to us who had gone through big losses in their investment portfolios. Their investment portfolios were down 60%. Some of them actually got physically sick, I think, because the stress of seeing their money go down more than half, it brought them tremendous stress and worry, and that manifested itself as physical illness. So it's important to, we think, pay attention to all 4. And, I think it also goes back to, even the wealthiest person in the world, you're not insulated from that physical health part. The health is the great equalizer. And, you could be a billionaire and you can get sick. So it's important to pay attention to all 4, whether you have money or you don't have money.
Absolutely. And I think hopefully one day I can get someone on the show to talk about nutrition. But I've been reading a lot lately about how much our food affects our health and our weight. Mm-hmm. And it's to say it any better, we've become a society of corporate food, and as it is, that means that they're creating our food strictly for the profit potential.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of discussion about our government's food pyramid.
Yes.
And is that for the benefit of the food industry or for your and my health?
And the more I've been reading and the more I've learned, I have come to realize that everything we were told in school was wrong.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. But you know what the beauty is, though, Rocky? With the internet and in this information age, there is so much information at our fingertips. And when you want to learn about something, it's all there, right? You can do research. There's so much information readily accessible. You can read it, you can listen to it, you can watch it. There's so many different formats. What I think is really cool is that you can actually listen to Ivy League professors giving lectures, like college lectures. There are also doctors who are lecturing on food and diet. There are tremendous resources available to us.
The hardest part is figuring out what's true from
Absolutely.
What's not. And there are a lot of to filter, because there's a lot of labels out there that say something is healthy and good. Even a lot of the studies that were done, a university comes out and does a study that says XYZ.
Right.
But when you dive into it, you realize that they did that study because a corporation provided the funding to look for a certain outcome. And so it becomes much harder to discern what is true and what isn't true.
That's precisely right. That's why, for me, I just try to read. I try to read as much as I can, and then you kind of have a balanced approach. You know that certain studies are making one argument, others are going to be on the other side, and you're trying to make an educated decision as to what makes common sense after you read both sides. And not always easy, but at least there are experts that you can listen to. And over time, I think that you get a sense for you as an individual, like what makes sense to you. And then you try to follow which experts you like and whose ideas you like.
And then I suggest you test them and see what the results are for you, because what works for someone else may not work for you.
Yeah, and just a quick story as a somewhat random side note, but since you were talking about food that we eat, I just got back from Maui this morning. I was out in Maui for a conference, and I have a friend out there who's a farmer. He's actually a professional musician, but he's also a farmer. I had the opportunity before the conference started. I drove up to his farm. He's got about 3 acres. He grows different fruits. He has goats on his property. Sometimes he has a cow. So I went up to visit him. He prepared me a wonderful Hawaiian breakfast. Then he told me that, at 10 o'clock, if you're still here, I don't know what your plans are. I need to go to my neighbor's property to help teach this younger guy, because my friend's an older guy. He's Hawaiian. He's as one who grew up in this indigenous culture, he's big about living off the land and farming. So he said he's going to the neighbor's property because he's teaching this younger guy how to slaughter a turkey and clean the turkey. Do you want to come? And I said, well, I'm up for a new experience. I'm like, I live in the suburbs of New Jersey. I get my food from the supermarket, but sure, I'll come along. And that was quite the experience for me. I watched them slaughter the turkey, and I actually helped to defeather the turkey. And I was witness to how one, takes care of their own food, and they know what the turkey ate and what kind of environment the turkey has been in, and they're going to have that turkey for Thanksgiving.
I was going to say, are you still going to eat turkey?
Yeah, you know what? I thought that it was going to be a much more violent ordeal. I really did not know what to expect. Sadly, I think not being on a farm, my only exposure to something like that was watching this Faces of Death videotape when I was a young kid. That was like a tape that you could borrow from the video rental place. But no, my friend told me that it's a very peaceful process because you don't want the turkey to have a lot of adrenaline. So you don't want to scare the turkey and have it be this violent process. He says it's like very zen and keep the turkey calm. And he said a little prayer before killing the turkey. And yes, I'm still going to eat my turkey this Thanksgiving. And I regret not being able to eat their food because I think, as I said, they're saving this for Thanksgiving. They're going to have a second turkey and they're going to have lamb that they're going to prepare in a traditional Hawaiian imu. They dig a pit in the ground and cook the food. I'm sure it's going to be quite the feast. I wish that I could be there to taste it, but unfortunately, my turkey will be coming from the supermarket.
And I have a feeling it's going to be adrenaline packed.
Yeah, probably. That's probably right.
Oh, it's a shame that we don't know. It's hard to find good food today. That's all.
It is hard. I think that hopefully, as people become more aware of, the importance of eating the right foods, the impact of genetically modified foods and organic foods, I think that people are aware and trying to make some choices. So hopefully things will be getting better. There's a lot of debate about labeling. We'll see if any changes take place. But I think that consumers are trying to demand more transparency.
Yes, consumers are. It's just a matter of getting the growers and the packagers and all of everyone else on board to be able to follow through.
The industrial machine, that is the question. What kind of changes can actually be affected? But we'll see. We'll see. I think at least when the consumers demand, at least there's a chance and there's a hope to be moving in the right direction.
Very true. So you talk about inspired money. you made the comment that while saving and being debt-free is important, once you kind of get there, you need a shift in mindset.
Mm-hmm.
What did you mean by that?
Well, I think that there is a lot of information for people to, help them pay down their debt. Too many people today do have either credit card debt, or there are students who are coming out of school because tuitions are so high these days. They graduate with 100,000 plus in student loan debt. So I think that there's a lot of education and resources trying to help people to free themselves from debt. And that is a big project. Once that their debt is paid down, I think that it does require a shift in mindset, because at that point, instead of only thinking about how do you save, one does have to think about how do you make your money work for you. And this goes back a little bit to, everybody has sort of a different money personality. Like some people like to spend, some people like to save, and not even taught to us. It's just sort of something that we're born with. I mean, for me personally, I don't know why. I think that I tend to be much more of a saver than a spender. But my father told me years ago, he said, it's great to be thinking about saving, and I love finding a great deal. That gives me some pleasure. But he says, you do have to also think about how are you going to grow your money and focus your energy on that idea. How do you focus on either building a business or the money that you have? How do you invest that so that it's working for you and growing over time? Because by growing your money and not only saving, I mean, there are two sides, right? But I think that shift in mindset, if you pay down your debt, then you have to focus on how do you grow your money, because at the end of the day, you're trying to make your money as impactful as possible.
Absolutely. And so do you help people create multiple streams of income, or is that outside of your...
Generally, that's outside of what I do. I think I had put down on paper just some ideas. It's like, how does one make their money more inspired? Because I think it's more than just a number, or it's more than just the bills that are in your wallet. I've started interviewing people on the Inspired Money podcast, and people of all different backgrounds and occupations. I've interviewed an actor, I've interviewed musicians, I interviewed an executive director of a 57-year-old nonprofit. So I'm trying to explore a lot of ideas that people have about money. What I find is that, not surprisingly, that money does not guarantee fulfillment or happiness. And to have inspired money, it's like, what are the different things that one may be able to do to define like inspired money? Like, what does inspired money mean? One of the characteristics, because of the technology that you and I have been discussing, I think that there are opportunities for people to have multiple streams of income, maybe different businesses, doing some consulting or creating an online business. We're seeing that quite a bit today. I think that's just one characteristic of how can one experience inspired money. Having multiple streams of income is a good one.
When I think about when you're talking about inspired money, I think the money isn't going to give you the happiness. You've already got to be happy. The money is only going to magnify whatever it is that you have.
Yeah.
So if at the base you're not happy, the money isn't going to make you happy. If you're angry, the money's just going to make you angry.
It can. That's true.
It can, right? We all know rich, angry people. There's a lot of miserable rich people out there. So clearly it's not correlated.
Correct.
You have to have the habits up front to be happy, and you have to make that your mindset. And then the money just amplifies it and gives you the opportunity to be even more so.
Correct. Yeah, I think my observation is that, people's passions come into play, like doing something that you're passionate about. That's going to have a closer correlation to happiness than the money part. Oftentimes, when you're following your passion, you're doing something that you really love. The focus is not necessarily the money. The money is almost a byproduct. It's like you do what you love and the money comes after, if you're lucky. And then I think the other thing is that it's not just a passion. It's like passion with a purpose. It's like even a deeper meaning. So I think there are a lot of interesting things to explore when it comes to money. These are themes that you explore quite regularly on your podcast.
That's what this is all about. It's exploring all of those themes and understanding it, and then putting all the pieces of, you call it pillars of health. I have a slightly different wording for it, but it's putting all those different pieces together and making sure that they are balanced. Because when one area is out of balance, it's like, you've got this beautiful sports car and you've got a flat tire. It doesn't matter. You're not going anywhere. The same thing happens with our life. If one part of our life, whether it be our health, our relationships, our money, our mindsets, are not in sync, then you're essentially driving with a flat tire and things aren't going to be good. So you have to figure out how those things all go together and how those pieces fit together for you specifically, because what inspires your father may not be what inspires you. And there are people who don't want to talk at all about that kind of stuff, and that's fine. It's been very hard in the past because people haven't talked about this in school. They don't sit down in college and say, hey, if you make this choice, here are all the outcomes of that choice. Here are all the good parts, and here are all the bad parts, and here are all just parts. Are you okay with this outcome from this choice that you've made? I think a lot of times people find out way too late in the game that they didn't realize what they were getting involved in.
Yeah, and I think that the other thing worth mentioning is that it's what are one's priorities. I think the priorities are very important in this discussion, because when you talk about there are very wealthy people who are angry or unhappy, but at the end of the day, it's like, what priorities are you setting? Are your priorities on, is it some passion that you're trying to create as an occupation? There's family. It could be charitable giving, trying to help people and do something larger than yourself. It's a number of things, but I think it boils down to priorities, like setting those goals and what's important to you, because that is what's going to define your happiness, or at least be more closely correlated to your happiness than your bottom line when it comes to your balance sheet.
Absolutely. So you're a financial advisor. I'm assuming you sit down with clients and you help them manage their money, correct?
That's correct.
So when is the last time a client walked into your office, dropped their life plan on your table and said, here's my vision for my life. Here's my financial paperwork. Make the finances fund this life.
Right. Yeah. That pretty much never happens.
and that right there is the problem. That never happens. And I've tried to figure out why and understand why. And I've been told the reason. And the reason is, in a sense, that you as an advisor don't get compensated for that, number one. Number two, that may not be your expertise. While you're good at X, you may not be good at Y. And unfortunately, nobody's talking to people about creating that life plan and being crystal clear in what you want, and then using your money and the rest of the things to back it up. And that's literally what the focus of this program is to get people to do that. I had a call this morning with my coach. Mm-hmm. He goes, I have something to do for you to do today. And I said, okay. He started reading my my life plan. And he said, I want you to just put 2 columns down on the paper. And are you satisfied with this, or do you want to grow in this area? And he started going line by line through the different things in my plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going, and luckily everything was checked off yes for the most part. I had a handful of areas in that entire plan that I needed to focus on. But I have the plan, and I have somebody behind me who's making sure that it happens, and pulling all those pieces together. And just as you said, it's very rare that even wealthy people who have money, who come sit to you and say, help me grow my money more, still don't have that plan. And without a target for your life, how do you know what to shoot for?
That's exactly right. Yeah, and it goes back to what I was saying about setting one's priorities, because that's not the same for everyone. Each person is going to have unique goals and objectives. What's important to you may be different from mine or to my neighbors. Each person has a different occupation, different priorities, different family makeup, and different goals. All of those things, they are important. I think that we're starting to do more planning, and we're evolving on that front. But as far as life planning goes, there is a subsegment of financial planners who are trying to develop that practice as like the focus of what they do. But on a whole, it's still a very small percentage of our industry.
Is that where you're looking to go by interest, or?
For me, I think that first and foremost, our backgrounds are as analysts, and we're pretty heavy into research of the economy and valuation of the overall stock market and individual companies. And that's why you were asking me about financial hurricanes. So I think that for us, that's like a strength that we have. It's like we are super focused on trying to help our clients grow their money and protect their money. And I think quite frequently, my industry really ignores it, look the other way when it comes to protecting the money. They like to say that you got to weather the storm, just have a long-term outlook. I think the reality is that if you're retired and you're on a fixed income, you can't always afford to do that because you don't have as long, time to invest and withstand a big drawdown. But yeah, I mean, possibly for us to evolve more to incorporate some of those ideas of life planning. That's possible. It's evolving. So certainly those are conversations that we are beginning to have with some of our clients. But it's not for everybody. Some people, they don't have the answers and they don't even want to address it. So you got to take baby steps. Rocky, it's kind of like the food. It's like, the consumer demands and the industry doesn't. So you just try to keep marching in the right direction.
Do you notice a difference in the happiness levels of those who are willing to address it versus those who want to ignore it?
I think it varies. I think that those who are trying to address it, sure. I think that inevitably when one is having the discussion, that's like a huge, that's a huge accomplishment already. It's just like you're having that discussion, you're willing to address it. And then if you're setting your goals and being able to tick off the boxes, you feel good about that, right? You told me that you sat down with your coach. I'm sure when you tick off the boxes, that feels good. And it also helps you identify what areas have you not ticked off yet that you need to pay attention to. So generally, I think the answer is yes. Those who are going to address it find it helpful. But happiness comes in different forms. So, we have some clients who are very charitably minded, and that's where they find, tremendous amount of happiness. And then we have other clients that that's not their focus yet. They're busy trying to build a business, and that takes up most of their time. For all of us, it comes down to having a finite amount of time, and where are you going to focus? And hopefully it's the pillars of health, or having a balanced approach so that you're taking care of all those important things that will sort of help your life and not hold you down on something specific, that you're not neglecting one item that is going to cause a problem for the entire thing.
And that can happen. One item can bring everything down just
That's
because
right.
it sucks the life out of you. Just out of curiosity, so do you have a lot of retired clients?
Yeah, we have a fair number of retired clients.
I'm just wondering, out of curiosity, what percentage of them don't do anything as far as maybe working or volunteering in an area that they find that they're passionate about?
I think that among our clients, just anecdotally, most of them are either volunteering for causes that are important to them, or they're chasing a passion of theirs that just gives them enjoyment. And whether it's sometimes it's golf, sometimes it's tennis. It's not just the sport. I mean, there's a whole social aspect to that. It's being part of a community, being involved in a sort of retirement golfing community. I think community is extremely important, right? Whenever you look at those longevity studies, places in the world where people are living into their 90s, community is an important part. It's family, friends, being involved in the community. You cannot be in a nursing home all by yourself without any company. That generally is not going to be the right recipe. You want to be surrounded by people. Human beings are very social. You need to have that aspect to be healthy.
And we talk about that in building relationships. It's one of the building blocks here at Richer Soul, and you have to be intentional with that.
Yes, I think that's critical.
I think a lot of people think about, I want to retire and play golf, and then they retire and start playing golf, and they realize after a year that it wasn't all it was cracked up to be.
Right. I've met those too. But then usually they find some other things. Volunteering for some local organizations. There's a lot of that because a lot of our clients were attorneys before they retired, or they were business owners. They have tremendous talents that they can contribute to local nonprofit organizations, or going to the local library. There are great organizations that need smart, capable people to really be helping the cause. It's a mutually beneficial relationship there.
Absolutely. And you don't have to wait till you're retired to do that. I serve on different charitable boards and community boards, and there's absolutely no reason you can't start to do that when you're young.
Right.
And
absolutely.
You don't have to wait till you're retired. And the cool thing is, though, but think about this, right? So if you go serve on a charity board and it's full of a bunch of old, retired, really rich people in the business world, guess who opens doors for you?
Right.
So there's multiple benefits to giving and being around those types of people as well.
Absolutely. So, yeah, because it comes down to relationships, the social aspect. You work with your friends and you help out your friends. There are tremendous positives there. Makes me think that maybe I'm on the wrong board, but
again,
I think my board is missing the super wealthy retired individuals. But you know what? I'm on that board because I'm passionate about the cause, and that
now
okay.
You have to find a super rich person to be on the board with you, so they can write the checks.
Yes. Well, maybe that's coming in the future. We better plan about our onboarding for new board members.
That is a process. Onboarding and expectations or giving are part of being on a board. I mean, that is the purpose of the board of a charity, to raise money.
Right. Yeah, that would help our goals longer term. So, yes, thank you for that.
Absolutely. So, are there any topics that we haven't covered that you like to talk about with regards to inspired money?
We covered a lot of items. I think that it comes down to, I think the inspirational part is important, and maybe gratitude. Maybe I should just close with gratitude. I think gratitude's important because I feel that gratitude opens a lot of new opportunities and possibilities. When you're not grateful, your eyes are kind of closed. You're kind of like in tunnel vision. And maybe through being grateful for the opportunities that are before you and for the things that you have, just your vision is, I think, more open. And there are things around us that when you're not grateful, you're kind of just blind to. Being grateful opens your eyes and you see all these opportunities that are right in front of you and can bring really great things. So inspiration is important to like motivate people to get past inertia. And that's important when it comes to finances because there is so much inertia. People need to address their finances. There are things that they can be doing in regard to their investments or paying down debt. And all too often, people just want to ignore it. So you need the inspiration, and then you also need some gratitude. Really appreciate the things that are important in one's life. And that also goes back to priorities, identifying one's priorities. They're all interconnected.
They are. And unfortunately, American society kind of believes in silos. And schools are silos. Working in a company is very siloed most of the time. And so we create these siloed lives. But the reality is life is not a silo. All these things are interconnected. And you have to make those connections and keep them all in balance. And I know gratitude's a big thing. That's one that I've really worked on this year. Mm-hmm. And when you actually think about it, for anyone listening to this podcast, you wake up in the morning, you're in a climate controlled room, you've got running water, it's hot and cold, you've got a vehicle to take you places, you've got the internet to be able to learn anything you want. Compared to the last couple thousand years of life, you're living really, really well today. We should be happy for that instead of comparing ourselves to somebody else and wanting more. Be happy for all the things you have because you have so much.
Absolutely. Maybe you should go to a farm and slaughter a turkey. At the end of my podcast, I always close saying something along these lines. To do something that scares you, do something that's going to make you better, and do something that's going to make the world a better place. And I think that's sort of tied into what you're saying.
That's a wonderful way to close out. So I think people should try and do something that scares them. And I talk about that. You can jump with a parachute. So you can do things that scare you that are safe.
Yeah, I was going to say,
yes.
I don't know if I want to jump out of a building, or jump out of an airplane. It doesn't have to be dangerous, but just do something that's going to take you out of your comfort zone.
Correct.
And out of your climate-controlled room. Sometimes that's just getting in front of a group of people and giving a presentation. Sometimes it's learning a new instrument or new language. Sometimes it's just trying something new or trying a new food. Anything that takes you out of your comfort zone, I think, is healthy and expands your horizons, which is all positive.
Absolutely. So if people would like to listen to your podcast or to find you, where should they do that?
Oh, thank you, Rocky. They can find my podcast at inspiredmoney.fm, and that will also lead you to my company website. So encourage listeners to read our blog, subscribe to our blog where you can get free educational information. And if they have questions, just to reach out via the contact link. Love to hear from people.
And I encourage people, someone offers to teach you something, take them up on that offer and send that email, make that phone call, and get out of your comfort zone and learn something new today and figure it out for yourself.
Here, here. Perfect.
So thanks for joining us. It was a pleasure having you today.
Thanks, Rocky. Thanks for your great show, and it's a pleasure to be on. Thanks for having me.
I encourage you to check out inspiredmoney.fm and Andy's work. Clearly, where you focus your attention is where you get results. You need to be intentional in all parts of life, beyond just your balance sheet. Is there someone you know who could benefit from what we talked about today? Please share, as it helps to build your social capital and create better relationships and start better conversations with the people you know, and they'll appreciate you for doing so. So, our call to action. What's one small step you can make this week to improve your life or get out of your comfort zone, as Andy talked about? Sometimes the step is starting something new. Other times it's eliminating something that prevents you from success. What's preventing you from moving forward? And who are you putting on your team to help build the life you deserve? Ready to take massive action? I'm here to help you. Build your path and create the life you deserve. Thanks for listening. You can always get me at Rocky at Richer Soul. Have an abundant week.